My name is Karoline Lewis, and I am professor of biblical preaching at Luther Seminary and the Marbury E. Anderson Chair in Biblical Preaching. And so I teach the beginning preaching courses, some electives. I am also the interim chair of the leadership division, and I also do the Sermon Brainwave podcast, and then am the program director for the Festival of Homiletics. Barbie or I haven't seen either, which I am sorry to say that that's true because, well, I don't know why, I just haven't gotten there. I did see Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, and I saw Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny. But I love Cillian Murphy. He is really, really good. You need to, I think my best advice I could give you is to go in with eyes wide open, and knowing that it's still a challenge to be a woman in ministry in the church, still a lot of resistances, and there will be very obvious moments of patriarchy and mansplaining and gaslighting and sexism. And so to have your hand on some good resources and then also some really good support, women who are close to you, women who have been in ministry for a while, you can rely on them as resources and as confidants and conversation partners. So eyes wide open, and then have some really good mentors around you. What inspired me to go to seminary was that my mom was already here. She was a student, and my sister Emily was coming as a student, and she wanted to get a Master of Arts in Pastoral Care and Counseling, and I thought, okay, I'll go to seminary. So that was, I grew up at double PK. Well, my mom wasn't a PK at the time, but I grew up at PK. And so when you grow up at PK, you swear you'll never be a pastor, you'll never marry a pastor, both of which I did. But I came to seminary with the idea that I wanted to do something in Christian education. I was not going to be a pastor. And here I am doing Christian education. But it really was, I was at a time in my life where I had been a year out of college and really struggling with what is it that I want to do. I was a violin performance major in college, and not a whole lot of jobs are available for that. And so just it was a vocational discernment, really, that brought me here. And here I am. And what would I tell my younger self? Definitely never say never. Being a pastor was one of the greatest joys of my life. And I think also being open to, when I came to seminary, like I was going to get an MA, I wasn't going to get an MDiv. And the registrar at the time said, well, you should take Greek because you're going to need Greek if you do the MDiv route. And I think I would just affirm that decision of my younger self again, to say, like, you just went with it, and it set in motion going to grad school and New Testament studies. And so I think it would be telling my younger self, way to go, you were open to taking Greek, New Testament Greek, and you didn't freak out, and you did, and you loved it, and here I am. The best way to get to know me is to go out for coffee or a glass of wine. And whether that's, sitting at a bar or, coffee shop or something like that, but just sitting down with a beverage, whatever that beverage ends up being, and taking the time to talk and to be with each other and to really have a sense of relationship, and in a casual kind of setting where you're not over a desk or in a classroom or something like that. Just kind of getting out and yeah, I think you learn so much about people by how they are in public spaces, and how what's your favorite drink and why, or what's your favorite kind of coffee and why, or is maybe tea or whatever. And so yeah, that's definitely the best way to get to know me. Well, I am not very good about reading books. I tend to read a lot of nonfiction. And so the book, I'm not all the way through it that I'm reading now, but I would really recommend actually. It's called The Grieving Brain. And my father died last September, and my mother died 3 years ago. And this book was given to me by a friend who lost her husband. And it has been absolutely fascinating and really, really helpful for thinking about what grief does to you, and how that grief is not the same as depression. That grief is it's your actually your mind has to the synapses in your mind actually have to reconnect. They have to rewire. And so the reason that you're tired, and the reason that that you have that sense of fatigue, is that your brain is literally rewiring itself because that person is no longer in your life. And so especially with my dad, my whole life, my identity was daughter. So how my brain has to rework and refigure out, okay, what does it mean when you're no longer a daughter? And so I just it's a lot of neuroscience, so I kind of skip over those kinds of parts because I don't know what's going on there. But it's been really, really helpful to come at grief, which is a big thing for all of us, of course, but also when you think about pastoral care, as pastors and as leaders in the church, to come at grief from that perspective has been really eye-opening for me. Ooh, my go-to karaoke song is Stand Back, Stevie Nicks. So, Stand Back. Yeah, I love that song. It's also my walkout song, so, like if I know I'm going out and facing a crowd or whatever, like what kind of pumps me up. But I love that. I love that song. And yeah, number one, definitely. Absolutely. This summer, because I was born and raised in California. So the snow is still like, I can't even believe that the snow comes and it's that cold. And it's like a shock to me every single year. But I think my favorite thing is the lakes. I live about 6 blocks from Lake Harriet, and to be able to just walk down there and walk around the lake and just see how all the foliage changes over the season, and then geese have babies and see them grow up, and there's like a little turtle sanctuary, and there's a little like coffee shop kind of place that you can get stuff. But the lakes are really just so unique, I think, and so beautiful. And I love being able to do that when it's warm. I do not walk in the winter. No, no. This is sometimes a little hard to pitch because I teach a class that everybody has to take. So you can't escape me. And that is Foundations of Biblical Preaching. But it is I think it's an absolutely critical course, obviously, to learn how to preach. But also, one thing that I don't think we realize, or I don't think students realize when they go into preaching, they think, oh, I have to take preaching class, I have to learn how to preach, and so on and so forth. But I don't know that students realize like what a critical intersection it is of all the classes that you've taken at seminary and you will take. So, because in preaching, you're doing leadership, you're doing pastoral care, you're doing theology, you're doing biblical interpretation, you're doing public speaking. And so it's a course that, yes, you're learning the basics, the foundations, right, of preaching, but it also gives students and the classroom a space to really to start thinking about how do we integrate all these classes that we've, check history, check theology, check biblical interpretation, but what happens when they're all happening at once, which is pretty much what ministry is. And so that's what I think is one of the best things about teaching preaching is having that space to think about that with students, and to think about how all these different classes and subjects are really coming together. And there's a reason why you take all of them, and not just requirements, but they really do come together in preaching. What do I do for fun? I am a big weightlifter, so that is essential. I mean, it's fun most of the time. Sometimes it's really hard, but I lift weights 2 times a week, heavy weights, and then do some HIIT classes. Yoga, I love yoga. That's definitely something fun for me. I love trying new restaurants, cooking, and trying new recipes. So yeah, cooking, but mostly the fun piece for me is working out. That's absolutely key for me. Yeah. So if I'm not in my classroom, or you'll find me at the gym. Well, speaking of weightlifting, now this is a small weight. This is only 3 pounds. And so I lift way more than this, but I think I had actually a PR this week, which was 242 pounds deadlift, and did that 3 times. So 3 reps of a 242. My PR deadlift is 1 at 261. This is my show and tell, because I love lifting. I love how I love seeing the progression. We chart everything, and you did this much last week, and I haven't had a PR in a long, that's a personal record, or a PB, personal best, and I haven't had one in a long time, so that was really satisfying, and it makes you feel really great, like, oh, look, I did something. The blessing or encouragement I would offer incoming students is absolutely, positively to be yourself, and to trust that God called you. God didn't call you to be like your classmates or your professors or another pastor. God called you, and to believe in that and trust that, and rather than trying to imitate or think that you need to sound like or look like or believe like other people, that's not what ministry is about. Ministry is about trusting fully in the incarnation. And since God was incarnated in Jesus, that means God is committed to the individuality and uniqueness of each and every one of us. And so there's a lot of pressure at seminary to have to believe this way and preach this way, and there can be competition. Just be yourself.